Hello and welcome to today's edition of Inside the World of Box Lacrosse. I am your host, Trevor Butz. He is Greg Beecher, and we have a great show on tap for you today as we discuss all things inside the world of box lacrosse. In particular, on this show, the Can-Am Senior B Lacrosse League and the First Nations Junior B Lacrosse League. But today, we're going to talk about something that impacts all of lacrosse, and not just those two leagues. A man who made a big impact on the lacrosse community, who's a man whose impact spreads far and wide across the lacrosse community. That is Carlin Woody Seneca. He unfortunately passed over the weekend. There you see a touching tribute graphic that was made in honor of him, as he is somebody that, touched a lot of people across the lacrosse community, and he will be very, very much missed for sure. You see Greg with the Gaiacono Lakers shirt on. He was the owner and head coach of the Lakers, and somebody that I know took a lot of pride in owning that team and being a part of that organization and building it from the ground up. And unfortunately, no longer with us. And Greg, I know you got to interact with Woody and meet him a bit more than I did. Can you just, tell us all a bit more about him and, the impact he made on you as well?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to put into words, really. If anybody who knew what he knew, he was all about everybody having fun. He believed in their traditions. He believed in the Haudenosaunee values. He was huge on that. But he also really believed in just making sure that everybody had a good time at the lacrosse games. We've got a short of him running up trying to score a BTB as the goalie, and that kind of I think encapsulates Woody perfectly. It was just about everybody having fun, playing for the creator, playing for those who can't, and yeah, honestly, without him, there probably would be no Blue Squatch. I was about ready to get all out of all of it. And then Woody kind of stepped in and told me how big it's been for the community, and he honestly helped us financially get into being able to afford the gear. If it wasn't for Woody, we would not have the equipment that we have. Blue Squatch would have never made it to Worlds. Yeah, I can't. There's a handful of guys that honestly there really would be no Blue Squatch without. He is definitely in the top list. There really wouldn't be. Yeah, no, we're gonna miss Woody. He was just such a caring guy. The other thing that was cool is, unfortunately, I didn't get him on the podcast, but Charity found our weekly Can-Am update that I was trying to do last year, and we did get him. So check that out if you want to be able to hear Woody, and he gives us a history lesson about it. Yeah, no, he's one of those guys. If you knew him, you were blessed to know him. But unfortunately, the creator has called him, so we know that we play for those who can't, and we will be watching. We the camera won't capture it, but we know he'll be out there as he's watching the rest of this league go through. But the standings, honestly, so Tonawanda, a team he's a big part of. His brother Cam Seneca plays for the Braves, and honestly, he has funded so many of the Braves games. So he's captured so many things. He captured all the kids games, the minors, and everything. Really special. But I will let you talk about these guys for a minute as I try to gather my thoughts here.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning some of that, Greg. That's some stuff I didn't even know about. Just him keeping Blue Squatch alive at times. That's just great to share. I'm glad you were able to do so there. But talking now about the Can-Am standings as we take a look at the five teams in the Can-Am Lacrosse League. This is taking into account all of Onondaga's forfeits for the rest of the season. So that is why some of the records might look slightly different than you might have expected. That is with all of Onondaga's forfeits. So the Redhawks will finish their season at 3-13. Grand River sits in fourth place at 6-9. They are locked into that number 4 spot, as we will have the top 4 teams in the Can-Am Lacrosse League playoffs this year. Newtown sits in third with an 8-7 record. They were the beneficiary of two Red Hawk forfeits late in the season. That gets them two more wins. That puts them up into third. Allegheny is 10-5. They have one more game remaining, as well as Tonawanda, as they sit up top at 11-4. And I do believe if the tiebreaker is head to head, Tonawanda is locked into that number one seed, as Allegheny can only max out at 11 wins. Tonawanda can get 12 and make it so no tiebreakers are necessary, excuse me. But if Tonawanda does lose their game this weekend and both teams finish with 11 wins, I believe head to head would be the tiebreaker. Tonawanda does have that 3-1 advantage over Allegheny. So should be interesting to see how this winds up. But right now it's looking like the Braves going to be the top team in the Can-Am Lacrosse League this season for the playoffs. And if that's a huge advantage for Tonawanda, as you know, Greg, if the playoffs got to run through Logan Field, it's going to be big for Tonawanda. The Braves are undefeated at home this season. So that's going to be huge for them, as we see Utica Yeti in the chat talking about Woody Seneca, a good man that did good things. Absolutely. Can any of the players from the Red Hawks be picked up by other teams? I believe so. As players become free agents, I believe they are eligible to be picked up until a certain point. I know there's a deadline coming up here, Greg. It might have just passed, actually, being that it's July 2nd now. I almost want to say it was June 30th. Don't quote me on that, but
I think you're right, and I think I'd be interested to see if anybody picked up Rio Johnson. I think he would be one of the top picks. Most of the teams have their goalies, so I wouldn't expect anybody to kind of pick up JP. Although the amount of shots he faced this year, you got to talk about the goalies when you talk about these teams that don't have a ton of players, because for them to be able to take it like that, I believe the playoffs are also locked in. So you were talking about that. According to Stamper, during the last live stream that I got to watch, which was the one before all the chaos erupted, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But the playoffs are pretty much locked in, so it's going to be Tonawanda playing the
Grand River
Grand
in the
River,
first round.
yeah, and then Allegheny and Newtown playing. So some electric first things, but yeah, I would expect Rio. Who would you say would be your top pick? I guess Trevor, if you were taking somebody off, because it's so hard. Mason Homer, you talk about a guy who can play two way, so you really need defense to get you through it. Both guys are pretty young and can go through, though. I don't know. Who would you take?
Oh man, there were a lot of good players definitely on that Onondaga team this year. I know the record doesn't show it, but you mentioned Rio Johnson. He's somebody that is first to mind. I think, Creek Cathers, of course, but I think he's pretty much an Onondaga guy. Maybe he'll bounce around. I'm not sure. Dan Rogers is somebody that defensively, if you need some depth and some leadership back there, he is somebody that can really help the team out. You mentioned Mason Homer, of course, Trevor Hill, and somebody I like the look of. A couple younger guys, Gabe Edwards and Bryson Jones, have been guys that stood out. But I really like as well John Pierce when he is healthy. I know he was telling us about the broken hand. Yeah, if that'll keep him sidelined for a little bit, but if he's healthy and good to go, he would be a big ad for any team. Coming down the stretch run here, but Onondaga unfortunately cannot continue, so they end their season at 3-13. Disappointing year for the Red Hawks by their standard, but just kind of one of those years. It happens to teams, not a ton of guys coming out for all the games, and tough to travel and whatnot, and leads to some, a short end of the season, as they have to forfeit a few of the games here to wrap it up, as Cree signed with Oswego. Interesting, as he'll head over there.
Dream, so only you could hear me. Sorry. A lot of those players are playing in the NABLL. There's actually quite a few of them playing with the Lakers, so that's why I wonder how many of those guys will go. I don't know if any of them will. I mean, in the playoffs, the Braves and Grand River has really been heating up. Did you get a chance to watch any of that game?
Bits and pieces I've gotten to see, bits and pieces. Was unfortunately I've been working, wasn't able to sit down and watch the whole thing live, but yeah, bits and pieces of that one for sure.
Yeah, it's gotten pretty intense. There is some heated rivalries. It's my favorite part about Can-Am, honestly, is the passion that a lot of these guys play with. So when you see this happening, it's like, okay, what do we got going on for the season? I think the bigger thing is going to be, can Newtown get consistent enough to beat Allegheny? Because Newtown, we've seen them. They've beat Allegheny. They can play in the games. They've got the goalkeeping. They definitely have the forwards. Can they keep pace with that, though? I mean, is that something? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
It's easier said than done, that is for sure. Um, for Newtown, they're going to have to beat Allegheny in a best of five series, and this is somebody that can really help them in doing so. Tehoka Nanticoke, as you see, hits the corner perfectly on the penalty shot. Couldn't do it any better. Absolutely right in the top right corner. But for Newtown, like I was saying, you're going to have to win some games on the road as they're the lower seed in that best of five series. But that's okay. They've done it already this season. They've went to Allegheny and won a game this year, so it can be done for the Golden Eagles. They have seen it and done it this year. But it's a whole different thing to do it come playoff time, especially in a best of five. And like you said, Greg, Newtown and any team really that runs into Allegheny, you got to keep pace with them. They're a fast team. They like to play quick, and they're a tough team to keep pace with. And Newtown's going to have to do it. They're going to be tested, in that series. But I think it's going to be a real exciting one.
No, it's definitely going to be an exciting one. I think the biggest thing is going to be, like you said, can they keep pace with them? I mean, you got Ranjan, and you have so many studs with Newtown. I honestly think they can keep pace. The biggest thing is going to be, can they consistently score the goals? I mean, you've seen sparks from these guys, and really, I don't know. When you talk about Chase Martin and getting by Goa, to, boy, that's a tough road.
They got a great goalie tandem in Allegheny, that's for sure. I mean, we've talked a lot about some of their defenders throughout, this season. I know I've been really singing the praises of, Xavier Taylor as we take a look at the league leaders in points. I believe it was June 24th that was posted by the Can-Am on their Facebook. So that is accurate to that date. As you see, Gates Abrams way out in front across the league leaderboard in the points category. 84 points for him, 59 helpers that really lead the way for him, push him in front. Lane Smith tied with Owen Hill for second, 56 points each for them. Nathan Grennan, 44, and Waylon Abrams, despite missing some time with his suspension earlier in this season, still in the top five as of that date. 38 points for him. He is somebody that has been great for Tonawanda. I know I've sung his praises throughout the year as well, and they definitely missed him as when he was gone. As we take a look back at the chat for a
Gabe is
moment,
going nuts. I mean, it did blow up. Thank you very much for the participation. I love it. He was famous because he was in the background of that video. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about Waylon for a minute. So, without that suspension, would he be in the top? I've got, for the points. I think I mean, he's
he
still in
could
the
be
top
second.
five, but yeah, would he shoot past Lane Smith? I don't know. I would imagine. How many games did it end up being? Was it seven?
I want to say six, so
Six?
it
Yeah.
was quite a few. I mean, to miss 6 games and still be in the top five in scoring is pretty impressive in a 16 game season. So that tells you how impactful Waylon has been when he's been in the lineup. As his impact was noticeable right from the get go in that game against Newtown. Um, you know, I don't have his goals in front of me, but I want to say he had at least a hattie in that game, if not just two. He was very impactful, and then he kept it rolling right into their game against Allegheny. As we take a look at the league leaders in goals, Lane Smith was out in front, the only 30-goal scorer up until that point. Owen Hill was real close with 29. He might have crossed that 30-goal plateau in the Braves' most recent game. Gates Abrams, 25 goals for him, 23 for Nathan Grennan, and then 21 for Waylon Abrams. I mean, looking at that again, I mean, I think Owen Hill as well. He's somebody that is he quietly, I
I was
feel
just
like,
gonna
gets
say.
56
So
points and is second in the league in scoring. He's such a good player, But with Gates and Grennan, Whalen, all this stuff going on, he's just so steady, but yeah, quietly getting those points.
Well, honestly, a lot of it is I think Waylon, or I'm sorry, not Waylon. Owen, he really like I was going through the highlights, and every goal of his is not like that crazy highlight goal. So when you watch it, like Gates is getting crazy highlights assist, which is why he's doing so well in the points now. Like he's really putting himself out there. But a lot of times he's dishing it to Owen, and Owen is just he does all the non-flashy stuff. You know, he never stops, constantly moving his feet, and when he gets the ball, he's there for the quick stick, and he just kind of buries it. Like you said, not flashy goals, but it's why he has so many great positional lacrosse. And I mean, you talk about just being in shape. This team has done crazy things with it. Owen Hill, I think, is one of those guys who doesn't get enough credit for the shape he's in. He can play defense. The whole Tonawanda team, leaving guys on the floor is such a big part of it. They got guys that run out of both doors all the time.
Oh, absolutely. And just you mentioned just for a moment there, Gates getting a lot of his assists. That Tonawanda offense really just runs through him. It seems like every time he's on the floor, he's got the ball in his stick the most. But yeah, getting guys like Avery Steinbeck Parker is another guy who stands out to me as somebody that can play both ends of the floor. He had some struggles a little bit early on playing defense, but he's kind of been forced into that role a bit more than he would like, maybe would have liked to earlier in the year, but he's done a good job of it. And there's somebody else that can play both ends, Taylor Jensen as well. He's a threat offensively just as much as he's a threat defensively to take that ball away from the opponent. I love the play of somebody like Anthony D'Amico as well. Does a great job on face-offs as well for Tonawanda. But I think somebody like Ian Dolak has been impressive as well when I've gotten to see him play. Always like Dan Jimerson and of course Nelson Brett Logan. So many
Yeah.
guys for Tonawanda. And I've talked with some people down at Tonawanda and they've said, man, we have so many O guys. We got to send O guys back to play D. That's like what I was talking about with, a bit with Avery there. He was an O guy last year, having to go back play a bit more D this year. And then, guys like Cam Seneca, he was an O guy a bit more last year, playing some D.
And the year before,
Scott
he's actually
Johnson,
the
both ends.
defensive captain for them, though. So when you talk about Cam, he really
Yeah.
stepped up and he's taking ownership of it. He's getting times of games and getting video put out and really leading that defense together. Yeah, it's been, like you said, so many guys there can step up and play. You take a guy like Dolik, he gets up the floor, and really the maturity he's shown on knowing when to take the shot and when not to, I think has been a huge growth this year. He was always an athlete. I think that box IQ has really gone up this year. And kudos to Gates. He does a lot of the GMing there, getting things taken care of. A lot of people might not know that, but Gates kind of organizes so much of that. Guys coming in, and then you leave it to the coaches to cut guys down and do it. But boy, everybody's got to be down to their 30. Oh, I would not want to be one of those coaches right now.
They got to make some tough decisions. But like you said, when you got guys like Gates Abrams and Cam Seneca that do their leadership on the floor, but also off the floor like that, when they are able to lead like that, they can make some of those decisions a bit easier. But yeah, I do not envy being in the position of any of these head coaches right now, having to cut your roster down. And, just talking once again about Tonawanda, I mean, somebody else like Anthony Patterson was another guy who he can play offense. We've seen him do it for Tuscarora in the past, and he's been great defensively, along with Corey Becker as well. Two guys that
What does
have
that say
played
about the
offense
talent on
before.
this team that we just now are getting to those two guys? It's crazy because, like,
Yeah,
when you talk
yeah.
about those guys, they're phenomenal players. Anybody who's been following Can Am long enough knows, like, those are some of your top D transition guys. And honestly, I think, like, Corey Becker, if he wasn't so busy with his real, real life outside of that, he's a guy that would still be in, on an NLL team. He's just a crazy athlete, and he just makes it look so easy when he's out there.
Oh, absolutely. Such a good defender. I feel like he has an eye for that stick. He knows right where to put his stick to knock that ball free. Such a, just an accurate defender and somebody that can get up the floor in transition, moves the ball well, and he can put the ball in the back of the net. And he's not a liability by any means on offense either. He can score with the best of them. Like I said, we saw him do it a bit with Tuscarora, and we saw him play solid defense with Halifax for a year in the NLL. And that's glad you mentioned that about his job, because that's not something I knew either. That's part of why it kept him out of the NLL, because I've been wondering for the last few years, like, my goodness, this guy is a heck of a ball player. How has nobody picked him up? But that tells you why a little bit there.
I believe he's a cop. Don't quote me 100% on that, but I believe he's a police officer, so it's hard to get weekends off, especially when you start out in that field. You're
Yeah.
working the shift nobody wants, so you're working weekend nights and all that fun stuff. So I'm pretty sure same reason why a guy like Scotty Johnston hasn't been around as much. He's another local cop. So the yeah, it is this is it's my favorite part about the Can-Am, because you see so many of these guys that could play up there. It's just a matter of they don't really have the time, and or yeah, mainly the time, or unlimited sources of money. Like if I'm sure if they were all independently wealthy, that's all they would be doing. But instead, most of us have to get real jobs.
Wouldn't it be what we're all doing?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, I completely agree. I understand that. So when we talk about the playoffs, they're doing 5 and then 7. Anybody going to sweep it? And then we're going to get on to juniors here in a couple
Ooh,
minutes, but we got to get through this first. I'm
ooh.
going to call you out. Who is most likely to sweep, which I guess would also mean be swept, and who is, I guess, uh, if you're talking Grand
Ooh.
River or Newtown, which one is more likely to be swept, or which one is more likely for the upset?
Um, that's a tough question. That I do have to say that is a tough question, Greg. I first of all will say I don't think either team's gonna get swept. I think I could honestly see Newtown Allegheny going all five. So I guess just for that reason, I'd have to say Grand River more likely to be swept. But I think the Warriors have that home field advantage being up in Canada, and Tonawanda has some issues with having to travel up there. So it could be tough, for them to take every game up in on the road. But, I think it'll be a battle. I think Tonawanda will get at least one. That's why maybe it'll end in four. But I do think Grand River will win a game. But I guess if I had to pick one that was more likely to be swept, I would pick them. But uh, as far as an upset goes, I mean, Newtown, I think, definitely beat Allegheny. Anything can happen. The Arrows are a very good team, but the Golden Eagles would be the upset pick in that series. They are the lower seed, but I think we got two very entertaining series coming up, and then a championship series that's going to be a best of seven, which I am very excited for, Greg.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I'm really excited this year. We're essentially not going to have to miss a moment of Can-Am playoff action. So Stamper will have everything covered in Canada. Between me and you, we will get everything covered stateside. Really excited for this. Yeah, like you said, I don't. Like you said, you can't really call it an upset when it comes to Newtown because of the talent. And I honestly, when you watch how Craig Seneca's played so far this year, boy, he gets hot, and they could. Ah, Allegheny's got a very tough road, and I, yeah, I really think so. You're talking transition, and goalies, I think, are going to be the winner of that season. And whose transition is Rudy George and Jimerson? And I mean, you name all these guys going to be able to do it, or is Hero Snow going to be Hero Snow? They called him that once in a tournament instead of Huron, so from now on, I just call him Hero Snow. So Snow might be the hero of this.
Oh, you took the words right out of my mouth, Greg. Heron Snow could be the hero for Newtown. I know he's somebody that can push the ball up the floor in transition for Newtown, but I think they're going to look to somebody like Ron John, one of their big acquisitions. He's definitely going to be somebody that's relied upon for the Golden Eagles. And, just talking, and you mentioned as well, can't really call it an upset. I mean, if Newtown gets the win this weekend, those teams could be just one win separating them, as Newtown could finish with 9, Allegheny could finish with 10. So, I mean, they are so close in just about every facet. I mean, looking more at Newtown, Jaden Jimerson as well, somebody that can, play both ends of the floor. He does a very good job. But Kane Kettle, somebody that stands out to me in particular, I feel like I've seen him playing a more defensive role this year with Newtown. I feel like I was used to seeing him play more offense in years past, but he's stepped up, and he's a captain on the team, so somebody that is leading by example. As you got to see the standings there and how close these two teams are, and looking over at Allegheny, you mentioned Rudy George. He's somebody that has gotten a lot of praise throughout the year, but somebody I really like for Allegheny is Patrick Timothy.
Yeah.
His speed can really change games. I think when he's out there, he can really be that game changer. But other guys as well, Ben Austin, somebody that kind of flies under the radar a little bit, not somebody that always stands out, but really does a good job. Darius Anderson,
Well, you
as well,
talk
somebody
about
dropping back for Allegheny this year.
Yeah, but when you talk about Ben Austin, just look what he accomplished. So when Tusky had their really short roster year, they had like 7 guys. We got to see what he can really do when he gets up the floor too, and that's something that just the grittiness. He's one of those loose ball vacuums. Honestly, I think that's what Allegheny. It's why I see them winning that series. I think they have those guys that'll get those loose balls between uh, Patrick Timothy. You talk about what a freak athlete he is. I forget about him because I haven't been there live for him to be on the floor for a game yet. You happen to capture the two. I saw it. I've had him before on the podcast. Huge Patrick Timothy fan, though. I do love watching him. He played for Tusky before. Ben Austin. Like you said, there's so many underrated guys, and I just see that being the difference. Is who's going to get those loose balls, the gritty balls, and who's going to get the games. Both goal. I mean, I see Chase Martin and Craig Seneca basically being it's an even match, and then Goa is the backup. I haven't gotten to see what is the backup goalie for Newtown? I'm now blanking on his name.
I have
Gage
Mason
Stevens.
Jones and Gage
Yeah.
Stevens as their possible backups for the playoffs.
Yeah, and watching Gage Stevens up in Six Nations, like he is very competent. He's a great goalie as well. So all four, I really see it being the small things in this game, and I think both offenses will get a set amount of goals. I think the key is those guys, the transition. Uh, it's hard not to like Ron John and Hero Snow, but I just think Allegheny's got more of those guys.
You're right. It'll come down to the little things. And when two teams are so evenly matched, that's often what happens is it comes down to those little things and small little plays throughout the games that, make the most impact. But one thing I do want to mention quick with Allegheny is I almost want to say it might be Goa that's going to start. He's started the few games I've seen from Allegheny this season, but that's just the advantage that they have with having two goalies that could arguably be the goalie of the year in any given year, and let alone be just starters in this league. That is what the advantage Allegheny has, and they can provide a bit of deception there with us not knowing necessarily who the number one is. Whereas for Newtown, everybody knows that when Craig Seneca is healthy and ready to go, he is the number one starting goalie for the Golden Eagles. Whereas Allegheny, they can rotate a bit.
Yeah, no, they can really rotate through. It'll be impressive to see how it goes. I guess we've talked enough about that. Let's talk this junior league. I'm excited. The Seneca War Chiefs, boy, that when you watched that last game against Tusky, Tusky had their moments, and then it looked like it kind of slipped out of their grasp. And we've seen this time and time again. I think the biggest thing with the Tusky team is their lack of box experience. Yes, they have Randy Chrysler, so you can't count them out. Whereas that War Chiefs team just all kinds of guys. And then when you talk about Tonawanda, Tonawanda has their moments. They are kind of small on the bench side a lot, though. They got a lot of guys that are working, doing different things. High school's over, so that should help a lot to make sure they have most of their guys. But how do you see this junior? I mean, we've got another game tonight. I guess we should start with what you got going on tonight and then go from there.
Yeah, it's a big one tonight. This one I've been looking forward to for quite a while. We have the Tuscarora Junior Tomahawks playing host to the Tonawanda Junior Braves at Cornerstone Arena tonight. 8 o'clock start time. Be sure to tune into that one. It should be a very good one. Tonawanda, 2-6 record. They are, in my opinion, much better than that 2-6 record says. We've all know about their X factor in Jackson Bob Pragle. He's the guy that can really make that difference for them and potentially lead them to a championship appearance. I know that's something that they're, working towards, but it'll be such an entertaining game tonight. But we're talking about Tuscarora and the War Chiefs in that previous game. Tusky, you mentioned the lack of box experience that they have. That's something that you could see a little bit at points throughout the season, but you're going to have to learn quick. And I think the Tomahawks, have been doing that. They've made some roster changes, heading into the final stretch run here of the season. So I'm excited to see, how these new look Tomahawks fare against the Tonawanda Junior Braves, as that's somebody that they took care of in, pretty easy fashion earlier in the season. The score's escaping me right now, but I just remember it was a lot to a little in that game. And, Tuscarora would love for that to be more of the same here, but I think Tonawanda has really bridged the gap, and it, like I said, is much better than the 2-6 record shows.
And from what I've heard, Casey Jonathan, anybody who doesn't know, he's a coach in Tonawanda. They were running some laps for some of their activities, so he has been cracking down on them. I think this is honestly, it could be the game of the year for both of these teams as far as just competitiveness goes back and forth. You talk about the X factor. Ah, that's why you cannot count them out. They honestly can beat any team on any given night with any one of these goalies. And so that is one thing I will admit. I don't know a ton about the War Chiefs. We haven't covered them a ton. I know some of the players. So you talk about Kennedy that plays for them. We've watched him play the seniors. Boy, that kid is phenomenal. When you that Kennedy, I didn't realize he was so young. And then when I was talking to Scotty Lay, he was the one telling me, he's still got junior time. He plays up. Boy, so when you got that going on, where do they put him? Is he going to be playing First Nations playoffs games? Is he going to be playing Newtown playoff games? That's a huge thing because you can't play both on the same. I mean, you can play both on the same day, but you're not getting the same Jaden Kennedy that you would if you didn't.
Oh my goodness, yeah. That would be quite a story though. Play a First Nations game at 1, play a senior game at 7 or something like that. That would be quite the day for Jaden Kennedy and for quite a few of these guys that do play up. Just for one moment, when Tuscarora last played Tonawanda, 21-10 was the final in that game. I don't think we're going to get an 11-goal game tonight, but we'll see. But in talking about the War Chiefs, some guys that stood out for them. I mean, offensively, I really like the game of Brian Freeman. He is somebody that really impressed me. I mean, looking through, in my prep, going through some of his stats, a guy who scored over 100 career points at GCC. He can do it at the field level. He can do it clearly at the box level. He is, put up some big numbers in the games when I've seen him play. Such an athlete, good on the crease, has the ability to just get by defenders with ease. I said one time during one of the games that he's got some big numbers in the field during his field stats, and it's sometimes those guys don't always translate to box, but for him it looks so natural. Like he can quite easily play field and box at a high level. I really like his game. Joey St. John, I believe I'm saying that right now. If I'm not, let me know. He looked very good as well. Colton Huff, a good part of their offense. But I mean, Garen John, somebody that that offense really runs through. He is a great shooter for that War Chiefs team. Got to talk with him a bit at one of the games after their win against Tonawanda. A good nice young man as well. Croy Snow, somebody else that was very impressive. And then they got some depth guys too, like Bobby Stevens and Ethan Steeprock, that can really contribute for the team. And they got solid goaltending, in between the pipes as well, with Damian Warrior being their starter. And, it's just a lineup that's filled with talent. I mean, at each of the games when I've seen the War Chiefs, Greg, they have at least 10 to 15 guys not even dressed for the game. Some of these other teams have been running short benches. Well, they got plenty of reinforcements there with the War Chiefs, and that's just going to benefit them come playoff time.
No, and that says a lot about the program, really, when you talk about it. So kudos to those guys. They've built a great program. They've been pretty much the preeminent powerhouse in the league. I mean, they really are the team that everybody's going after. So when you
They're
talk
a team
about
to beat this year.
yeah, I mean, you've got guys coming from all over to play for them. Unfortunately, Onondaga doesn't have a team. So Garen John last year played with Onondaga, got to go up to the Founders Cup. They've got guys with that kind of experience. They are good, but we haven't even talked about like Tanya Davis yet. How about that save the other day? And this is where I think the box experience comes in because Tuscarora has several offensive guys that have grown up playing box lacrosse for the Tuscarora kids and gone up through it. But I think defensively, they've got a couple of guys still that are just getting that. And that's where Freeman really kind of exploited them in the middle. And you needed Davis to be able to kind of, that one save with the ball in the middle, he comes back out, has the patience to kind of get over and get it. I was like, wow, that was nuts. Probably one of my favorite saves of all time.
No, Tanyan Davis definitely has that ability to make some big saves, when called upon. He's provided very solid and steady play in the net this season. That's what I would how I would describe it for the Junior Tomahawks this season. And you mentioned some of the guys that have, grown up through that program. I believe Jake Gansworth, one of those guys as well, the captain of the Junior Tomahawks, does have that box experience. So he's going to be somebody that they are really relying upon offensively in particular, as this season comes to an end and as the playoffs, begin. But, talk defensively, guys like Cameron Villavada, Jet Richardson, those are two guys, I've really, pumped their tires throughout the season. They're guys that have been very impressive, for the Junior Tomahawks as well. And, I'm excited to see, how this team looks. Got to see a glimpse of what their new look roster looks like, as I know I got to see some of their additions. Bryson Jones, one that really stands out to me. I believe that's the same Bryson Jones coming over from Onondaga, and he looked impressive with the Redhawks at the senior level. Another one of these guys that not really sure had junior eligibility left, but we find out he does and gets picked up by Tuscarora, and I think he could be a big ad for the Tomahawks here as this season winds down.
Yeah, I'm just kind of looking through this finalized roster. I mean, and we haven't even talked about Thunder Hallett yet, and like Bryce Beto, but they also, I noticed they brought in Davy Jones's kid Braxton Jones. So they've got three goalies on that finalized roster that we got. So Eldon
Always
Ground,
good to
yeah,
have goalie depth,
yeah.
you
No,
know, especially when you make it to a Founders. It's like the Prezi. It's taxing, and you want to have that goalie depth. We saw with Tuscarora, they had some goalie injuries when they made it to the Prezi in years past. And so you always want to have that depth there because you never know what might happen.
yeah, so I mean, their playoffs are going to be a very. So we actually haven't even talked about this. We were supposed to have Vince Sandy on today. Unfortunately, he got called into work. Unrelated to us having Vince Sandy on was the fact that unfortunately the Six Nations Fire are not going to finish out the season.
Yeah, that is something we haven't even talked about yet, and something we do need to mention. Yeah, it's so unfortunate that Six Nations isn't going to be able to finish out the year. They were looking good at points. I mean, that was a team that was 4-1 at one point this season. They're going to finish the year at 4-4. At least with what is known, there were some games that didn't quite get posted yet. Don't always know the results of, but 4-4 is what we have them at. They're finishing their season at, and so unfortunate that they can't finish out the year. Um, they were a program that's really trying to grow. I believe only their second or third season of being in operation. So it second season, yeah, I
Yep.
believe that's what I was thinking, and just unfortunate is really the word for it. You never want to see a team not be able to finish their year, especially after starting. I know Tyan Denega was in the league for a few moments there.
Couple
Couldn't
of
even
breaths.
really get this. Yeah, couldn't get the season started, but that's okay. They're going to come back stronger next year. But hopefully, Six Nations can do the same. Just come back stronger next year. Um, and like I said, that was a good team. They had good players. It's not like the talent wasn't there, but just the numbers started to drop off, I guess, as the season progressed, and just made it tougher for them to field the roster and field the competitive team, you know, heading into the final stretch.
Yeah, so we talked about Onondaga guys kind of moving over for the seniors. There might be a few guys. Do you anticipate any of those junior players? Because there are a few junior guys that are from Tonawanda that are
Yes.
playing for that team. So I don't know when the deadline was for that, but I would definitely expect a few of those guys. Although man, they had some fiery games when they were playing against each other. It was funny. You'd see these kids throwing around. Like I show up early to pack things, and you see me there all the time. But when we get there early, these kids were all out playing together, or they'd be back on the floor at night, and then in the game they're trying to beat each other's heads off. It was nuts.
Oh, it was. Got to definitely see that in the game. Got to see that a little bit with the scrap that went on with Kalen Paulus taking on Harlan Jacobs in that one. A big tilt that was quite the entertaining one. Unfortunately, that game did conclude in that bench clearing altercation that did stop the game early. But in talking about some of those Six Nations guys that are from Tonawanda, when I was talking with Jason Pregel before the game, he's like, yeah, so and so he's right from Tonawanda, he's from over here, and then somebody's like, oh yeah, that guy lives right over there, yeah, his house is right there, yeah, I can see it from the field. So it's like these guys are truly from Tonawanda, from right there, and in that area. There's a couple guys here that I know I'm was told are from that area: Nathan Lamaestua, Ace Abrams, Jonas Ground, Darius Sundown. So quite a few guys. As any word on players playing in multiple leagues? No word on that yet. And I don't know if Greg has any info on that, but
So I've heard off record that it's going to be an issue at some point in the near future. Essentially, the if when guys are missing Can-Am games for NABLL games, it's one thing if you've got guys that aren't necessarily impact players. I think if that starts to happen, you will see it immediately. But until then, boy, I think they try to encourage these guys to get as much time as they can with a stick in their hand. But I do believe you're going to see a decision that comes out next year because I guess technically they're not supposed to. It's just something that's never really been enforced because technically they fall under the Canadian lacrosse rules. So we all know that they don't allow their players to play anywhere else. Although Can-Am is kind of a different thing, being all the native teams on this side of the border. So I don't know if it's one of those things that they haven't really just looked into it yet until it becomes an issue. But I would say, especially with more and more of these teams, part of the reason that I've heard people think Onondaga folded was because of so many guys playing on these NABLL teams. Oneida having a team, the Lakers having a team, heavily drawing from there. Uh, and the Serpents got some guys. Yeah, they're spread out, and I know everybody's obviously disappointed Onondaga couldn't field a team, so you might see something in the pipeline. I think they're not going to do anything for the end of the year, but I would imagine next year it will be a big deal.
yeah, something like that is it's definitely hard to change the rules like mid-season and whatnot, or try and make a new rule mid-year.
Or even
So
just
I would
change
definitely,
enforcement. If it's like past
yeah,
practice that they have it, it'll have to be a point of emphasis for next year. But all these guys, everybody thought it was no big deal, so guys have been playing. It will be interesting to see how that plays out, though. The biggest problem I think with it is, though, is if you beat up on a division in regular season with a bunch of guys that you know are going to go to President's Cup, it really shorts you for nationals and you don't bring the best team, and it kind of hurts the leagues as far as you're not maybe sending your best team there because you've got a bunch of guys going to President's Cup. And it's not even a question. You can go to the NABLL Nationals or you can go to President's Cup. I know which one I'm going to.
yeah, exactly. And it, these are things that are all going to have to get worked out, in due time. It's it's one of the first times we've had this problem, like like you were
Kudos
kind
to
of
the
saying.
NABLL for even creating this issue. I mean, they are
Yeah.
really growing box. That whole Buffalo, like that whole Western Upstate division, has completely thrown things out of whack with them. I think. Yeah, no, I'm sorry to cut you off there again, but that is a huge, lot of growth. I mean, that's 5 teams in a year.
Yeah, I mean, I know I was talking with some folks about like the Lakers, and they said around this time last year is when they came into existence, and them amongst many others are fairly new here, and like the NABLL itself, and yeah, they helped to create the problem, but it's okay. I'm sure they'll come together with everyone to work on a solution for it, because at the end of the day, like you kind of said, you want to just have guys get sticks in hands and just be able to play the game, and you know grow this game and grow these leagues, because I know it's a fantastic product here in the Can-Am Lacrosse League. Such an entertaining product. Players play with so much passion and with so much heart, and I'm sure that it is similar and going to grow into that passion in the NABLL. You don't just get that overnight, but I'm sure it's going to continue to grow and get better, as the leagues develop and the teams continue to garner more history as the years go on.
100%. I got to ask you this though. 3 periods, 4 quarters. What's your favorite?
You know, I was always a big four quarters person, watching the NLL and whatnot. But I tell you what, I've really gotten used to the three periods in the Can Am. I feel like it flows nice. Um,
10
I
minute
guess
breaks, I think, are huge, though, for the coaches. It gives you a better product on the floor, I think. But
yeah, it gives you 10 minutes of rest, two 10-minute breaks instead of, two 2-minute breaks and like a 15-minute halftime. Um, no, I kind of like the three periods, 3 20-minute periods. Flows like a hockey game. The only thing I will say with the three periods is you don't get the switching ends the fair
long
amount of
bench makes a
time.
huge difference, yeah.
And I think, in Tonawanda in particular, being outside, having to battle the sun, that could make a difference, if the wind's going against you, only
It's a big deal, yeah.
switching ends for the first and second, that could really make the difference. Not getting that extra switch in there
Do you
like
think
you
they
would in the
built the
four
field
quarters.
like that intentionally? They were like, okay, home field's here. Our goalie's not going to be staring into the sun. We're good.
Hey, I wouldn't be surprised of it. I mean, we've seen the Miami Dolphins, when they've played the Buffalo Bills down in games in Florida, they angle that stadium so that the visitor sideline at Sunday at 1 o'clock is standing there right in the sunlight. And if you know anything about Miami sun, even in the fall, it gets pretty hot. And players have been known to be dehydrated and passing out on the sideline because that's how they oriented the stadium. And it's no coincidence that their home sidelines in the shade for those Sunday 1 o'clock games.
I like it.
So
That's they need all the help
I,
they could get, though. I used to be a Dolphins fan when I followed football. They were terrible. Actually, when they got rid of Ricky Williams, was the end of it for me. I loved watching that. They just hand that guy the ball, and he would just pound it through the middle. Yeah, I was a big Ricky Williams fan. They got rid of him. I was like, you guys suck. I'm out of here.
well, there's plenty of room for you on the Bills bandwagon, but that is, definitely something that we've seen in sports. So to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised at all if it went, into the thought process a little bit. I know we've seen it with baseball diamonds as well. Do you want the pitcher looking into the sun or do you want the hitter looking into the sun? How do you want, the ballpark oriented? Do you know if you know the way the wind carries in a particular area? Do you want it to orient it that way so it carries out or it keeps the ball in? All this stuff, does go into the thought process when you design these stadiums and fields. Maybe not as much in at this level yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did cross the minds of some folks when, that box was first being assembled down there.
Yeah, absolutely. You would think so. And now they're getting ready to build another one, maybe. So we'll really see there. But we've been doing this for about an hour. I know we try to keep it to 30 minutes. Never happens. What do we got going on this weekend? So you're going to be at the junior game. Then we're kind of waiting for everything to finish up. I believe July 18th is when playoffs are starting.
That is what I heard as well. July 18th should be the first day, at least for the Can-Am playoffs. I have not got a solidified date yet for the First Nations League, but I would imagine around that time could be that same weekend. But as for what we got going on, of course, talked about our game tonight, Tonawanda and Tuscarora, a rivalry game, one that I know you're not going to want to miss. Be sure to tune into that one. Believe 8 p.m. is the start time. Yes, it is 8 o'clock. Tonawanda, Tuscarora at Cornerstone. You're not going to want to miss it. A great one on tap. And then we look at the Can-Am schedule for their remaining games. Tonawanda taking on Grand River up at the Brantford Civic Center. That one is July the 5th at 7 o'clock. And then the last game of the season, of the regular season, that is Allegheny taking on Newtown down at the Gilley Arena. That is July 6th at 5 o'clock. That game, could be a pointless game in the standings for both of those teams if Tonawanda takes care of business and makes sure they get that 12th win. But we'll have to wait and see. Door could be left open, but like we said, I do think the Braves have that tiebreaker with the head-to-head, as they're going to be tested against Grand River on the road, a place where they did lose their game earlier in the season. So it'll be interesting to see how the Braves fare in that road game against the Grand River Warriors coming up this weekend.
Yeah, no, that is huge. Basically, looks like it's going to be a preview of the playoffs. I don't think I'm going to get
Yep.
out there, but honestly, we might end up out that way. We're waiting on some news for a few things, but we might be heading out that way the end of this weekend. I don't want to commit to any plans, though. I'm holding our schedule open for Woody services, honestly. So when we have a definite on that, then I'll know if we're heading out there or not. Because that's my plan, is to go out there for those. If we can catch a game while we're out there, amazing. If not, we're just going out there to see everybody and send our condolences. Again, anybody who doesn't know, without Woody Seneca, there really would be no Blue Squatch. But that being said, we'd also like to thank CB's and Allegheny Clark for sponsoring these. We haven't even actually mentioned them. We are terrible for this. Camp Seneca for president. I love it. So, yeah, let's. I better throw that one up there real quick.
Oh, yeah, you got to throw that up there. Gates chiming in, Kim Seneca for president. You got to love it. Hey, I'll tell you what, he's got my vote, and so does CB's Cannabis Club. Be sure to check them out. Thank you to them for all of their support. Be sure to check out all of their great offerings as well. I know, Greg, you've gotten to talk with them a bit more about it, as um, we've gotten to build that relationship here recently. And,
Sweet
you know,
Hangout Lounge. We're going to be doing some podcasts from in there as soon as we can get schedules lined up. So, yeah, if you're anywhere down in the Salamanca area, definitely check them out. It's more of a hangout vibe than a lot of these places are. A lot of them are just you go in, you leave. They got pool tables, dartboards. It's a good time. Beautiful in there. They got murals. There's artwork everywhere. So, yeah, definitely check them out if you're in the area. Thank you so much, Trevor. And we will see everybody next week with more ITWOBL inside the world of box lacrosse. Tune into Stamp Lax for any of your games in Canada. Find T Butz on Instagram, and we will see you guys next week.